Beneath the twin suns of Varelli's prime, where the sky shimmered like molten copper and the wind carried the scent of crystalline dust and roasted root fruit, the town of Zarnik huddled in the crook of a rust-colored canyon. It was a place stitched together from salvaged starship hulls, repurposed cargo containers, and the stubborn hope of those who had nowhere else to go. Humans and aliens lived side by side here, not always peacefully, but with a grudging respect forged in the furnace of frontier survival. Among them walked Corwin Vale, a human explorer whose ship had crash-landed 3 years prior and never left. He wasn't stranded so much as settled. His boots were scuffed, his coat patched with polymer thread, and his eyes held the quiet weariness of someone who had seen too many galaxies and still hadn't found what he was looking for. It was on a market day thick with the chatter of a dozen species and the sizzle of street grills that Corwin first heard her voice, a whisper wrapped in tears, small and trembling like a leaf caught in a dust devil. He turned to see a child no taller than his knee, standing beside a stall draped in faded synthcloth. Her skin was the deep, luminous blue of twilight over an oceanless world, and her hair, long, fine, and impossibly white, tumbled over her shoulders like spun moonlight. Her eyes, wide and silver-flecked, shimmered with unshed tears as she clutched the hem of her tunic, her bare feet dusty from the red sand. "Human?" she began, voice cracking. "Can you buy me a toy for my birthday?" Corwin blinked. He wasn't used to being addressed so directly, especially not by alien children who looked like they'd stepped out of a dream. He crouched slowly, careful not to loom. "Your birthday?" he asked gently. She nodded, sniffling. "Today. I'm 7. But Mama says we can't afford anything. Not even a glow spinner." She gestured toward a nearby stall where tiny, humming toys spun in midair, casting prisms across the ground. "They're only 10 creds. But Mama says 10 creds buys 2 meals. Corwin's chest tightened. He'd seen poverty before, on mining colonies, refugee outposts, war-torn moons, but it always struck harder when it wore a child's face. He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the few coins he'd earned repairing a water recycler that morning. Enough for a meal, maybe 2. Not much more. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lyra," she said, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Lyra Vey." He smiled faintly. "Well, Lyra Vey, happy birthday." He stood, took her small, cool hand in his, and led her to the stall. The vendor, a grizzled reptilian with 3 eyes and a voice like grinding stone, nodded as Corwin placed the coins on the counter. Lyra gasped as he handed her a glow spinner, its tiny core pulsing with soft violet light. She didn't just smile. She beamed, as if the twin suns had decided to shine only for her. "Thank you, human!" she cried, spinning in place, the toy whirring above her palm. "You're the nicest human I've ever met." Corwin chuckled. "There aren't many humans here, are there?" "Only you," she said matter-of-factly. "And you don't smell like fear." That stopped him. "Fear? Mama says most humans smell like fear when they see us. But you don't." She tilted her head. "Do you like blue people?" "I like kind people," he said. "And you seem very kind." From that day on, Lyra appeared wherever Corwin went. She'd sit outside his makeshift workshop while he tinkered with broken drones or rewired old comms units. She'd bring him cups of spiced root tea, always too sweet, always served with a proud grin. She told him stories of her world, the one her parents had fled when the Sky Reapers came, harvesting entire villages for their bioenergy. Her father had died shielding their escape pod. Her mother, Mela, worked double shifts at the hydroponics dome just to keep food on their table and a roof over their heads. Corwin, in turn, taught Lyra how to tie knots, how to read human star charts, and how to whistle through a blade of canyon grass. He never had children of his own, never thought he'd want them, but something about Lyra's wide-eyed wonder and relentless optimism chipped away at the walls he'd built around his heart. Weeks passed, then months. The desert winds shifted, bringing cooler nights and the scent of approaching storms. Corwin began noticing things, subtle at first. The way shopkeepers would lower their voices when he walked by. The way Mela would stiffen whenever he came to collect Lyra. The way certain off-worlders in long coats would linger near his workshop, their eyes scanning, calculating. One evening, as he walked Lyra home through the narrow alleys of Zarnik, a shadow detached itself from a doorway. It was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the insignia of the Interstellar Compliance Bureau. His voice was smooth, practiced. "Corwin Vale," he said. "You're in violation of Article 12, subsection Gamma of the Xenoprotection Accord. Unauthorized emotional bonding with a minor of non-human origin." Penalty: immediate deportation and a 5-year ban from Varelli's Prime. Corwin's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? You've been seen acting as a guardian figure to Lyra Vey, feeding her, gifting her, spending excessive time in her company. The mother has filed a formal complaint. Corwin turned to Lyra, who was trembling, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Is that true, Lyra? Did your mama say that? Lyra shook her head violently. No, Mama would never. But before she could finish, Mela appeared at the end of the alley, her blue skin pale with distress. Lyra, come here, she called, her voice strained. Now, Mama, he's my friend, Lyra cried. Mela's eyes met Corwin's, and in them he saw not anger, but terror. Please, she mouthed silently, don't make it worse. The compliance officer stepped closer. You have 24 hours to vacate the planet. Your ship's been impounded, but we'll provide transport to the nearest neutral station. Corwin didn't argue. He knew better than to fight bureaucracy with fists. But as he walked away, Lyra's sobs followed him like a ghost. The next morning, Zarnik woke to chaos. A sandstorm unlike any in memory roared across the desert, howling like a wounded beast. Visibility dropped to 0. Power grids flickered. And in the midst of it all, a ship descended. Not sleek or official, but jagged and black, bristling with weapons. The Sky Reapers had returned. Panic erupted. Families scrambled for shelters. Alarms wailed through the dust-choked air. Corwin, packing his last few belongings, heard the commotion and ran outside just in time to see the black ship unleash a pulse that disabled every vehicle, every drone, every defense grid in town. Then figures emerged, tall, armored, their faces hidden behind mirrored visors, their movements precise, predatory. They weren't here for conquest. They were here for harvest. And they knew exactly who they wanted. Corwin saw them drag Mela from her home, kicking and screaming. Then they found Lyra, hiding beneath a water tank, and yanked her out like a doll. She shrieked Corwin's name, her voice raw with terror. Something inside him snapped. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. But he was the only one who could do something. Racing back to his workshop, he activated the one thing he'd kept hidden, a prototype pulse rifle he'd been reverse engineering from scavenged Reaper tech. It was unstable, untested, and probably suicidal to fire. But it was all he had. He moved through the storm like a shadow, using the wind and dust as cover. The Reapers had set up a temporary extraction field near the canyon rim. Lyra and Mela were bound, standing with a dozen others, their biosignatures being scanned for compatibility. Corwin didn't hesitate. He fired. The pulse rifle screamed, tearing through the air like lightning. One Reaper fell, then another. Alarms blared inside their ship. Chaos erupted among the harvesters. Corwin didn't stop. He sprinted forward, ducking behind crates, firing again and again, his hands burning from the recoil. Corwin! Lyra screamed when she saw him. Run! He shouted. Get to the caves. But Mela didn't move. She stared at him, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her cheeks. Why? She whispered. Because she asked me to buy her a toy, he said, reloading with shaking hands. And I couldn't say no. In that moment, something shifted in Mela's eyes. Not just gratitude, but trust. She grabbed Lyra's hand and bolted, pulling the other captives with her. Corwin laid down cover fire, his shots growing wilder as the rifle overheated. One Reaper charged him, blade extended. Corwin sidestepped, but not fast enough. The blade sliced his arm hot and deep. He stumbled, blood mixing with red sand. Just as the Reaper raised its weapon for the final strike, a blast from above tore it apart. Corwin looked up to see townsfolk on the canyon ridge, humans, aliens, even the three-eyed vendor, firing whatever they had. Plasma torches, mining lasers, even old hunting rifles. Zarnik wasn't going down without a fight. The tide turned. The Reapers, outnumbered and disoriented by the storm, retreated to their ship. It lifted off with a deafening roar, vanishing into the swirling sky. Silence fell, broken only by the wind and the soft cries of the rescued. Corwin collapsed to his knees, clutching his wound. Lyra ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. You came back, she sobbed. You came back for me. Of course I did, he whispered, holding her tight. Birthdays only happen once a year. Mela knelt beside him, pressing a cloth to his arm. You risked everything, she said, voice trembling, for a child who isn't yours. Corwin looked at Lyra, her white hair matted with dust, her blue skin smudged with tears and grime, her eyes shining with a love so pure it hurt to look at. "Maybe she is," he said quietly. In the days that followed, the town changed. Walls between species crumbled. Humans and aliens worked side by side to rebuild, to fortify, to prepare. Corwin's deportation order was quietly dropped. No one in Zarnik filed a complaint, and the Compliance Bureau had bigger problems than a human who bought a toy. Lyra never let him out of her sight. She slept on a cot in his workshop. She helped him repair the pulse rifle, this time properly. She even started calling him Papa Corwin, though she always blushed afterward and ran away. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the canyon rim, painting the sky in gold and violet, Lyra sat beside him on the roof of his workshop, swinging her legs over the edge. She held her glow spinner, now cracked but still humming. "Do you think the Sky Reapers will come back?" she asked. Corwin watched the stars begin to blink awake. "Maybe," he said, "but next time we'll be ready." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Will you stay?" He looked down at her, at the child who had wept for a toy and ended up giving him a reason to stay on a broken world. "As long as you need me," he said. And in that moment, beneath the endless stars of Varelli's prime, Corwin Vale finally knew what he'd been searching for all those years across all those galaxies. It wasn't adventure. It wasn't fame. It was a tiny blue-skinned girl with white hair and a heart too big for her small frame, who had asked for a toy and given him a home instead. The desert wind whispered through the canyon, carrying with it the scent of root fruit and hope. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. And for the first time in a long time, Corwin smiled. Not out of politeness, not out of habit, but because he was happy. Truly, deeply happy. But peace on the frontier is never permanent. 3 nights later, as Corwin repaired a broken moisture condenser behind the hydroponics dome, a signal crackled through his private comm. A frequency he hadn't heard in years. Encrypted, urgent, human. He tapped the receiver, heart pounding. A voice, cold and familiar, spoke through the static. "Vale, we know where you are. And we know about the girl." Corwin froze. It wasn't the Compliance Bureau. It was worse. Project Lumine, Earth's black-budget initiative to weaponize alien bioenergy, had tracked the Reaper activity. And they traced Lyra's unique genetic signature. She wasn't just any refugee child. She was the last of the Vey bloodline, carriers of a rare neural resonance that could power an entire fleet, or destroy one. They weren't coming to deport him. They were coming to take her. Corwin shut off the comm, his hands shaking not from fear, but fury. He looked toward the small window of Mela's home, where a soft blue glow indicated Lyra was still awake, probably drawing pictures of their next adventure. He wouldn't let them have her, not while he still breathed. He slipped into the night, moving faster than the wind, his mind racing through plans, routes, hiding places. He'd need allies, supplies, time, and this time he wouldn't fight alone. By dawn, half of Zarnik knew the truth. By noon, the town was a fortress of traps, decoys, and silent determination. Humans and aliens stood shoulder to shoulder, not as neighbors but as family. Because Lyra wasn't just one child. She was theirs, and they would burn the stars before they let her go. Corwin stood at the edge of the canyon, watching the eastern horizon. Somewhere out there, ships were coming. Men with orders and cold hearts. But here, in this forgotten town on a desert world, something warmer was growing. Something stronger than fear, deeper than blood. It was love, and it was ready to fight. The first ship arrived not with fanfare, but with silence. A sleek, obsidian wedge cutting through the upper atmosphere like a blade through silk. No comms hail, no warning, just the low, predatory hum of grav thrusters as it settled beyond the eastern dunes, cloaked in adaptive camouflage that shimmered like heat haze. Project Lumine had learned from the Sky Reaper's mistake. No brute force, no spectacle, just precision. Corwin watched from the ridge, binoculars pressed to his eyes, his breath shallow. He'd expected soldiers. What he saw chilled him deeper. Scientists in armored envirosuits, flanked by humanoid synthetics, biomechanical enforcers with glowing ocular sensors and limbs that moved with uncanny fluidity. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to extract. Worse, they'd brought a neural resonator, a device designed to amplify Lyra's innate biofrequency, forcing her into a state of controlled emission. If activated near her, it could paralyze her nervous system or, if pushed too far, burn out her mind like an overloaded circuit. He turned and sprinted back to town, boots kicking up red dust. Zarnik was already on high alert. Mela stood at the center of the communal square, arms crossed, face set in grim resolve. Around her, townsfolk, human, insectoid, amphibious, avian, checked weapons, sealed vents, and activated the decoy emitters Corwin had helped rig from old mining drones. The plan was simple. Make Lyra invisible, make Zarnik look abandoned, and lure the intruders into the canyon's labyrinth. But Lyra had other ideas. She stood in the doorway of Corwin's workshop, clutching not her glow spinner, but a small, humming device of her own making. A jury-rigged pulse modulator cobbled from scavenged comms parts and a shard of crystalline ore she'd found near the old Reaper crash site. Her white hair was tied back, her blue skin smudged with grease, her silver eyes sharp with a focus far beyond her years. "They think I'm just a battery," she said as Corwin approached. "But Mama told me something last night." Corwin knelt. "What?" "That the Vey bloodline doesn't just emit energy. We redirect it." She held up the device. "This isn't a weapon. It's a mirror." Corwin stared. "You mean, if they try to pull energy from me," she said, voice steady, "I can send it back, tenfold." A slow, dangerous smile spread across Corwin's face. "Then let's give them a reflection they'll never forget." That night, under cover of a false sandstorm generated by the town's atmospheric scrubbers, they moved Lyra to the old geothermal vent at the canyon's heart, a place the townsfolk called the Whispering Maw. It was unstable, prone to energy surges, and nearly impossible to scan from above. Perfect. Mela stayed with her, while Corwin and a team of volunteers laid the trap. They buried resonator jammers along the access trail, rigged sonic mines in the rock faces, and coated the canyon walls with reflective nanodust that would scatter any bioscans. The synthetics might be smart, but they weren't psychic. At dawn, the Lumine team advanced. They moved in perfect formation, scanning, probing, silent as ghosts. The decoy drones fluttered overhead, broadcasting false heat signatures from empty shelters. The synthetics paused, heads tilting in unison, confused. Then one of them stepped on a pressure plate. The canyon erupted. Sonic mines detonated in a cascading wave, not loud enough to harm, but tuned to the exact frequency that disrupted synthetic neural processors. The enforcers staggered, their ocular lights flickering. Before they could recover, Zarnik's defenders struck. Nets from above, EMP bursts from hidden alcoves, even a well-aimed bucket of conductive gel that shorted out two synthetics in a shower of sparks. But the scientists weren't idle. From the rear, a woman in a command suit activated the resonator. A low, throbbing pulse rolled through the canyon, subsonic, insidious. Corwin felt it in his bones. And then he heard it, Lyra's scream. He ran. Deep in the Whispering Maw, Lyra writhed on the stone floor, her body glowing faintly blue, veins pulsing with light. Mela held her, tears streaming, chanting an old Vey lullaby in a desperate attempt to ground her daughter's mind. The resonator's frequency was clawing at Lyra's neural pathways, trying to force open the conduit within her. "They're hurting her," Mela cried as Corwin burst in. "Lyra!" Corwin dropped beside her, grabbing her small hands. "Focus. Use the mirror." Through gritted teeth, Lyra nodded. She raised her device. It whined, then flared with brilliant cobalt light. The resonator's pulse hit her, and bounced back, amplified, twisted. A shockwave tore through the canyon. Above, the Lumine command ship shuddered. Alarms blared inside its cockpit. The resonator overloaded, exploding in the scientists' hands. The synthetics collapsed, their circuits fried by the feedback surge. Even the sand seemed to recoil, swirling in chaotic eddies. But the victory was short-lived. From the ship's underbelly, a new hatch opened. Not soldiers, not scientists. A single figure descended on a grav lift, tall, regal, draped in iridescent robes that shifted color with every movement. Her skin was the same deep blue as Lyra's, her hair long and white, crowned with a circlet of living crystal. Her eyes, silver, ancient, and cold, locked onto the canyon below. The crowd fell silent. Mela gasped. "No, it can't be." Corwin frowned. "Who is that?" Mela's voice was barely a whisper. "Queen Zyra, Lyra's aunt. The one who betrayed our clan to the Sky Reapers." Lyra went still. "She's alive." Queen Zyra landed gracefully on the canyon floor, untouched by dust or fear. "Lyra Vey," she called, her voice melodic yet edged with steel. "You have grown strong. Good. The galaxy needs your power. You sold us out." Mela shouted, stepping in front of Lyra. You told the Reapers where to find us. I saved our species, Zyra corrected calmly. By giving them a few, I preserved the many. And now, with Earth's forces circling like vultures, I offer you a better path. Come with me, Lyra. Rule at my side. Together, we will command empires. Lyra trembled, not from fear, but from betrayal. You lied to Mama. You let Papa die. I did what queens must, Zyra said, extending a hand. Now, child, choose. Be a martyr in this dust bowl, or a sovereign among stars. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Lyra stepped forward, not toward Zyra, but past her, toward Corwin. She took his hand. I already have a family, she said. Zyra's eyes narrowed. Sentiment is weakness. Love is strength, Lyra replied. The queen's expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice. She raised her arm. The crystal circlet flared. From the ship above, a beam of coherent energy lanced down, not to kill but to contain. A stasis field, designed to freeze Lyra in time until she could be extracted. But Corwin was ready. He shoved Lyra behind him and activated the last trick they'd prepared. The geothermal vent's emergency release valve. With a roar like a waking god, superheated steam and ionized gas erupted from the canyon floor, swallowing the stasis beam in a blinding plume. The field destabilized, collapsing in on itself with a thunderous crack. Zyra staggered back, her robe singed. Foolish human, she hissed. You think you can shield her forever? No, Corwin said, standing tall, bloodied but unbroken. But I can shield her today. And then, impossibly, the sky split open. Not with weapons, with light. A fleet descended, not Lumine, not Reapers, not Zyra's loyalists. These ships bore the sigil of the Galactic Concord, the neutral peacekeeping alliance long thought indifferent to frontier worlds. At their lead was a vessel shaped like a blooming flower, its hull shimmering with organic alloy. A voice echoed across every comm channel in Zarnik, calm and resonant. This world is under Concord protection by Emergency Clause 7. All hostile forces, stand down or be neutralized. Zyra cursed, her face twisting in fury. She knew better than to challenge the Concord. With a final, venomous glare at Lyra, she retreated to her ship, which vanished into warp with a silent flash. The Lumine operatives, abandoned and outgunned, surrendered without a fight. Silence returned to the canyon. Deeper this time, heavier with relief. From the lead Concord ship, a ramp lowered. A figure emerged, tall, elegant. Her skin the soft lavender of twilight, her eyes kind. She walked directly to Lyra and knelt. I am Ambassador Nyril, she said, and I bring news. Lyra blinked. What news? The Sky Reapers didn't act alone. They were funded by a faction within the Concord itself, one that sought to harvest rare bioresonant beings to power a secret armada. Your survival, Lyra Vey, exposed them. Because of you, dozens of children across the galaxy have been rescued. Lyra's breath caught. I helped. You sparked a revolution, Nyril smiled. And now the Concord offers you sanctuary, education, a voice in the Council of Young Sentients. Lyra looked at Corwin, then at Mela, then back at the ambassador. I won't go unless they come too, she said firmly. Nyril's smile widened. They already have seats on the ship. Corwin felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't expected this, hadn't dared hope. But as he looked at Lyra, this fierce, brilliant child who had turned a broken town into a fortress, a human drifter into a father, he knew the truth. Their story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. Yet as the Concord ship prepared for departure, Corwin noticed something odd. Ambassador Nyril's wrist comm bore a faint symbol, a coiled serpent eating its own tail. The same symbol he'd seen years ago, etched into the hull of a derelict vessel near the Orion Rift. A symbol tied to a myth. The Auro Collective, a shadow network rumored to manipulate galactic events from behind the scenes. Had they truly come to save Lyra? Or had they come to recruit her? As the ramp lifted and the engines hummed to life, Corwin held Lyra's hand tighter. He'd faced soldiers, queens, and monsters. But conspiracies, those were harder to fight. Still, he thought, glancing at the child who had wept for a toy and changed the fate of worlds. Maybe the best weapon against shadows wasn't a rifle or a resonator. It was hope, and Lyra had more of that than anyone he'd ever known. The ship ascended, leaving Zarnik behind. A small town no longer forgotten, but forever changed. Below, the people waved, their faces turned to the sky, their hearts full. Above, among the stars, a new chapter waited, and this time they would write it together. The Concorde ship, the bloom of Viridia, soared through the velvet dark, its organic hull pulsing gently like a living heart. Inside, Lyra pressed her face to the observation window, watching Zarnik shrink to a speck of red dust beneath twin suns. Corwin stood behind her, arms crossed, his eyes not on the view, but on Ambassador Nyril. Something still didn't sit right. The Auro symbol, the too perfect timing, the way Nyril's guards never blinked, never shifted weight, like they weren't quite alive. He'd seen synthetics before, but these moved with a fluidity that bordered on unnatural. And then there was the silence. No chatter on internal comms. No crew laughter in the corridors. Just the hum of the ship and the soft padding of footsteps that never quite echoed. That night, while Lyra slept in a chamber lined with bioluminescent vines, Corwin slipped from his quarters. He followed a maintenance conduit deep into the ship's underbelly, guided by a gut instinct honed across a dozen war zones. What he found froze his blood. In a sealed chamber behind the engine core, rows of stasis pods glowed faintly, each containing a child. Blue-skinned, white-haired, all Vey bloodline, dozens of them, harvested not by Reapers or Lumine, but by the Concorde itself. And standing before them, speaking into a private comm, was Nyril. "They're all accounted for," she said, voice stripped of its earlier warmth. "The last heir is secured. Initiate phase Omega." Corwin's breath caught. He backed away, but a floor panel shifted beneath his boot. A soft click echoed. Nyril turned. "Intruder." Alarms blared. Not loud, but sharp, like a needle in the skull. The corridor lights dimmed to crimson. From hidden panels, the guards emerged, no longer humanoid, but shifting, liquid metal constructs with glowing eyes and limbs that reconfigured mid-stride. Corwin ran. He burst into Lyra's room just as the door sealed behind him. "We have to go. Now." Lyra, already awake, didn't ask why. She grabbed her pulse modulator and Mela's old data crystal, the one containing Vey ancestral codes. "They're not Concorde, are they?" "No," Corwin said, prying open a ventilation shaft. "There's something worse." They crawled through the ship's veins, Mela close behind, her face pale but determined. Below them, the metal constructs flowed like mercury, hunting by thermal trace. Corwin knew they couldn't reach the escape pods. The ship's AI had locked them down. But Lyra had an idea. "The geothermal core," she whispered. "If I can link my modulator to the ship's bioreactor, I can trigger a feedback loop. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to knock out their systems for 60 seconds. 60 seconds is all we need," Corwin said. They reached the reactor chamber, a cavernous space where glowing filaments pulsed with raw energy. Lyra climbed onto a maintenance gantry, fingers flying over her device. Below, the first construct oozed through the doorway, its form solidifying into a towering predator with blade-like arms. "Hurry!" Mela cried, throwing a wrench to distract it. Lyra jammed the modulator into a data port. The ship shuddered. Lights flickered. The constructs froze mid-motion. "Go!" Lyra yelled. Corwin grabbed her, Mela right behind, and they sprinted for the nearest hangar. The bloom groaned around them, systems rebooting. They had seconds. In the hangar, only one vessel remained, a small scout skiff battered but functional. Corwin hot-wired the ignition while Mela sealed the hatch. Lyra slumped into the co-pilot seat, exhausted but grinning. "Where to?" Corwin asked, punching in coordinates at random. Lyra pointed to a star system on the NAV screen. Unmapped, unclaimed, glowing faintly green. "There. Mama told me about it. A refuge world. Hidden by Vey elders centuries ago. Only those with Vey blood can find the beacon." Corwin engaged the thrusters. The skiff shot from the hangar just as the Bloom's weapons powered back online. Plasma bolts seared past their hull, but they were already diving into a micro-wormhole Lyra had unlocked with her biometric signature. They emerged in a system bathed in emerald light. Before them hung a planet veiled in swirling auroras, lush, vibrant, teeming with life. As they descended, crystalline spires rose from forests of silver-leaf trees, and rivers of liquid light wound through valleys where creatures with feathered wings and gentle eyes looked up in welcome. This was Velara, the cradle of echoes. The moment their skiff touched down, the ground hummed. Flowers bloomed in their footsteps. A path of glowing stones formed before them, leading to a grand amphitheater carved from living stone. There, waiting, were figures blue-skinned, white-haired, but older, wiser. Elders of the Vey clan, thought lost to time. "You have returned the last heir," said the eldest, her voice like wind through chimes. And with her, the truth. Over the next weeks, Lyra learned the full history. The Vey were not just energy conduits. They were weavers, able to harmonize the biorhythms of entire ecosystems. The Sky Reapers, Lumine, even the False Concord, they all sought to weaponize that harmony. But here, on Velara, it was protected. Corwin was offered a choice. Return to human space or stay. He didn't hesitate. He built a home on the edge of the singing forest, its walls woven from memory vines that bloomed when touched by joy. Mela opened a school, teaching both human and Vey children the old songs and new sciences. And Lyra, now called Lyra the Unbroken, became a bridge between worlds. Years passed. The Auro Collective was exposed, its leaders brought to justice by a coalition of freed colonies. Zarnik thrived, renamed Vale's Haven, in honor of the human who defended a child's right to a birthday toy. And every year, on Lyra's birthday, Corwin gave her a new toy. Sometimes a carved wooden bird, sometimes a star map puzzle, once a tiny drone that sang lullabies. She was never just a refugee. She was never just a weapon. She was a daughter. And Corwin, the drifter who'd crash-landed with nothing but regrets, found something far more valuable. A family, a purpose, and a peace deeper than any galaxy. On the day Lyra married a kind-hearted xenobotanist from the northern groves, under a sky where twin suns and 3 moons shared the heavens, Corwin stood beside Mela, watching their child laugh as petals rained down like stardust. He didn't need adventures anymore. He had everything. And in the quiet hum of Velara, where every leaf whispered gratitude and every breeze carried the echo of a little girl's wish, the universe finally felt like home. Under the emerald glow of Velara's twin moons, Lyra stood at the edge of the singing falls, her white hair shimmering like captured starlight. Corwin joined her, his steps slower now, lined with age but light with peace. She handed him a small hand-carved toy, a human and a blue-skinned child holding hands beneath a shared sky. "For your birthday," she whispered, though it wasn't his birthday at all. He smiled, eyes glistening, and tucked it into his coat, right over his heart. Mela called from the garden below, laughter in her voice, as fire blossoms spiraled around her like living lanterns. The village thrived, part human, part Vey, holy home. No warships darkened their skies anymore. The Auro Collective had crumbled, its lies unraveled by truth and unity. Lyra, once a frightened girl begging for a toy, now taught children how to listen to the wind and heal with song. Corwin watched her walk back to her family. Her partner, her 2 curious daughters with blue skin and silver eyes, and felt no sorrow, only fullness. He'd come to this world broken, seeking nothing. He'd stayed for a whisper, and in return, the universe had given him everything. As the auroras danced above, painting the night in hues of hope, he sat on the porch of the house he'd built with his own hands, sipping spiced root tea, too sweet, just the way he liked it now. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed, and a glow spinner hummed in the warm air. And for the first time in his long, wandering life, Corwin Vale knew he was exactly where he belonged.